I've worked at 10 different companies through my career, and one thing I've picked up through all those places is how differently places think and talk about culture. Most companies end up describing their culture in vague, aspirational terms, like by saying, "We have a culture of constructive feedback." They'll speak it into existence, but whether that's true or not is different. So I've come up with a different way to describe culture. I think it's clear and skews more towards reality and not vague aspirations. Culture at work is patterns of collective behavior. Real behavior done by multiple people and done repeatedly, for better or for worse. It's all your culture. And once you start framing culture like this, you'll be able to get a more accurate picture of what your company culture really is. In this video, I'll explain why I think this is a better way to think about it, how you can better learn a company culture, and how you may better change it as well. Let's get into it. First, let's break this down. Patterns, repeated sequences. Collective, by groups, more than one person. Behavior, real actions performed by people. Do a lot of your meetings have no agenda and ramble on? That's part of your culture. It's part of a lack of care and respect for the time of your peers. Are sick days encouraged or discouraged broadly? Either way, part of your culture. This can either be trust and care for each other or distrust and suspicion. Do people tend to avoid sending messages off hours and on weekends? Culture being considerate for each other and respecting boundaries. These little things add up. Those are actions and behaviors, and they matter. So there's a bit of a definition for you. This also helps emphasize the next point, how work culture is more complicated than how it's usually portrayed. Another common mistake I see in companies is how they don't recognize subcultures in their organization. Let me show you what I mean. The way culture is talked about suggests that everyone is in the same situation, interacting freely with one another, creating a uniform culture. But anything beyond a tiny team isn't like this. You have different departments and disciplines. These tend to have their own subcultures. You also have varying seniority levels within orgs, and these people on these levels interact with each other, and those can form additional subcultures. These all exist within the larger one. Marketing has differences from engineering, mid-level managers coordinate with each other to share knowledge, and juniors have their own community, and so would people on an executive level. And while leaders make broad, sweeping statements to align everyone, these different groups are where behaviors mostly play out, and those real interactions on a regular basis create subcultures. And this is why I don't trust the big, sweeping cultural statements when I see them posted on social or hear them in an interview process. It's complicated, and so it's hard to track and describe. Because it's difficult for anyone to assess all of this continuously, what we get is generalized and glossed over. It's the magazine cover Photoshop job of culture. It ain't reality anymore. But I do think there are ways to get a more accurate picture. Not perfectly, but a better picture. Let's say you're going through an interview process. You're getting the sales pitch and you're giving yours too. Asking about culture may give you a starting point, but no verification, no detail. Take those answers, then try to find a way to talk to people you'll directly work with, future teammates or people in the same position, and from them you can get real stories, stories that demonstrate values you're curious about. For example, did they say they have a culture of constructive feedback? Great. Ask if leadership ever received critique and feedback from employees and how it was received and if anything changed. You won't get all the details at this stage, it's imperfect, but it's better than just hearing the aspirational statements. Once you do join, keep going, but with more access. You'll be able to have more open conversations about coordinating through a hiring manager, ask about things like how they handle sick leave, reviews, HR issues, all of that stuff. And in addition, start observing with intent. You can't do that while interviewing, you're not embedded yet. But once you're in, you'll be able to see how people actually treat each other. When I say with intent, there are specific situations to look at. Here's one of my favorites. Town halls. The intent behind these is to create an atmosphere of clear communication throughout the company, and despite good intentions, it can end up being painfully performative. During town halls, when leaders open up for questions, I've often seen dead silence. This is a thread to pull to find out why no one asks questions. Possibly because they used to, until they realized leadership deflected, avoided, or even gaslit with their responses. And so, what's the point of asking questions? Digging that up would tell me more about their culture of feedback than anything else. So observe and investigate things that really happened and what happens as a pattern. Ask for stories, and once you're able to observe with intent. Now, up to this point, this may seem overly negative because there's a lot to watch out for, but I believe almost everyone has good intentions and a desire to improve things, which I've also tried to do with varying success. So here's my advice if you're trying to improve culture. Start small, but not alone. If culture is collective, get like-minded folks together. Start as a group, model different behavior. This way you start off with a small pattern. As for ideas, I'll call back to an earlier example, meetings that tend to be meandering with no clear goals, an annoying but common problem. First, get a bunch of like-minded people on board, whoever tends to run most meetings. Together, you start new behavior in which every meeting by this group has a clear goal that once met allows the meeting to end early or let people who aren't involved anymore just leave the meeting early. This is a small, simple, and achievable change. Everyone who attends will see this behavioral change. In other meetings, if it's not being done, they'll start bringing it up. And so behavioral patterns can spread and it starts to change a subculture. Change a subculture, and over time, maybe that can impact the entire organization culture. Of course, if you are senior leadership, you can try and trickle down this change too. Just don't expect immediate uptake on that. It still needs time to propagate and stick. People need to champion and model new behavior and reinforce it. The same idea, from top down or bottom up, still applies. Start small, but not alone. All right, here are the takeaways from this video. Number 1, culture is patterns of collective behavior. Number 2, to learn a culture, observe with intent and dig up stories. Number 3, change culture by starting small but not alone. Okay, that's it. I hope this helped. I've been around a lot of organizations and it sometimes throws me for a loop when I talk to someone who's only worked at 1 or 2 places because I'm constantly comparing all the places I've ever worked at when I join a new one, and hopefully sharing what I've learned can help others who have less of a drifter kind of background like I do. If you're new to my channel, I'm Wayne, and this is the kind of thing that I like to talk about, less craft and more whatever this is. I don't know what to describe it as. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, and even if not, a little thumbs up would be really appreciated too. And please share this with anyone who you think might appreciate it. Thanks again for watching and hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.